Good afternoon, everyone. We're here Friday live at 1 with the Central Pennsylvania Theater and Dance Fest, which is happening virtually and anywhere you can log on June 11th through the 13th this summer. We're so excited to bring these interviews to you with creators that have been involved with the festival this year or in the past. And today we have a fantastic poet with us. Camille-Yvette Welsch is the author of 2 books of poetry. The first one is named Fool, and the second one is The 4 Ugliest Children in Christendom. A teaching professor of English, she teaches at the Pennsylvania State University, where she also directs the high school writing day. Her work has appeared in Menacing Hedge, Indiana Review, Cream City Review, Zone 3, Poems to Go, From the Fish House, The Writer's Chronicle, Split Lip, and among many other venues. She lives in central Pennsylvania with her husband and her 2 children who demand that they be named in all bios. So here we go. That is Sam and Callie. And the husband has no such aspirations, and so he shall remain nameless. So welcome with me to the studio, Camille-Yvette. Welcome.
Hi, Elaine. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today.
Here we are. Welcome. I know we were talking earlier that in this Zoom world, you have, children are going to school and they need the internet. So here you are. Beautiful to see you. And I, of course, have to compliment you on your beautiful background.
Thank you. It's all real.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Not virtual at all.
Yeah, people actually pay money to have like bookcase backgrounds, which is kind of nuts. So, yeah.
Yeah. And well, you come by it honestly, I know. We actually had a conversation a couple months ago, and it revolved around the idea that if your children expressed an interest in something, that you immediately bought them lots of books on the subject, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm a big believer of books at home. I think when whim meets opportunity, you're in good shape. Yes. When you have kids. That was how I found a lot of my early loves in life, and it was because we had a massive home library. And maybe it's not a coincidence that 2 of us are writers. So, who knows?
I was going to ask that because I know your brother Gabe is also a writer, and I was wondering if you felt there was some early influence, and clearly you do. And we'll see where the apple falls with your children with that amazing library that I know you not just have in that room, but through your house.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, you have 2 children. And they demand they be in the bios, which I think is just delightful. What do they think about you being a poet?
I don't think it's as much on my daughter's mind, but it looms kind of large in my son's mind. I've, as you know, he comes to readings with me, and he loves to have an open mic and be a part of it. And these 2 Staples boxes behind me are the culmination of his 17 books of Cuddles, which is his stuffed animal. It's 681 pages. So he's caught the bug. And so we'll have writers' hours where we'll go to a coffee shop or we'll sit on the porch or something and we write together. He's really enjoys it, and it's something that has kept him motivated through the whole quarantine. It's just this idea of writing. He writes fiction, but he just likes stories, and I'll throw it out to the kids when we're about to go to sleep. I'll say, okay, you have a hippopotamus, a hat, and a bicycle. They all have to appear in your story. Go, and then they'll whatever the story is going to be. But I think it helps them to always think about what the possibilities are and what connections are possible, so they're always thinking of life as a potential story with causality.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, as a writer yourself, what would you say are your most interesting writing quirks, if you have any, that you want to self-identify.
Well, I was thinking about that. It's like, I guess one of the things about me is that I write really fast. I mean, and part of that is that I only have so much time to actually sit down and physically write because I'm a teacher and I'm a mom. And so what will often happen is I'm kind of thinking about what I want to write through the week. And, up until quarantine, I had Sunday mornings. And so I would think about it again and kind of be open to whatever it was I was thinking about or trying to pick up an idea. And then on Sunday, I had 2 hours. And so I just knock out whatever I was going to do, and I'd write 2 or 3 poems in 2 hours and they'd be done. I'm not someone who kind of belabors the point because I just don't have time. And so, another time my husband gave me the gift of 24 hours at the Nature Inn in Bald Eagle as a gift.
Yeah.
And I had to finish my book. And I knew I had to write 10 to 12 poems in 24 hours. And it was like, okay, here we go. And that's what I did because that's the time that I had. And, when you're a working professional with other time commitments, you get fast. And so, maybe that's my quirk, I guess. And the other thing I think is that I'm really interested in maybe stories that are strange because I'm always interested in people's motivations. I mean, I think the one that comes to mind is I was at Peachy's out in Belleville before it burned down. And Peachy's was, of course, this great Mennonite store. And you could get anything, whether it was like bulk candy or pickled cow tongue or whatever you happen to want. And it was always kept, fastidiously clean. But there was this one piece of graffiti on the back of a bathroom door stall, and that was never cleaned. And someone had written in a big heart, "I heart the Lord." And I just thought, wow, that's such a weird piece of graffiti because it's so like the cognitive dissonance to put that down, and who would be compelled to do that? And a lot of people, associate graffiti with young people. But then I thought, well, what if it's not? What if it's like some 75-year-old woman who just like got a clean bill of health from cancer or something, who's just overwhelmed with joy? Or what if it's someone who's making deals with God to get that clean bill of health? I mean, I think that's really interesting. And so I'll try to figure out who that person is and and I'll kind of write away at drafts until I kind of figure out who that is.
Yeah. So I'm sensing, and I see it in your work often, this character-driven poetry. And I think that's there's many different styles and genres within poetry, of course. And you're kind of telling us a little bit about that process of where these characters that sort of become, voices is maybe not the right way to express it, but they become these parts of the poetry and maybe inspiration. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm a thwarted fiction writer who just doesn't have the patience for a novel. I said I write fast. I don't have time for those in between. Fiction has a lot of tendons to it. And I don't, I like bones. I don't like all of that, like in between putting things together material. I don't want to have to do that. And so I end up writing poems that are really narrative.
That's fantastic. I love that. That's such a beautiful and poetic way of putting it. We were talking earlier about the idea that, and part of the reason that we include poetry in the festival is that we feel very strongly that poetry is in fact a performative art. Unlike, fiction writing or prose or nonfiction, the performance of it is less imperative to the overall overarching message and enjoyment of it. I would love, if you're willing, Camille-Yvette, to read us one of your poems. Are you willing to do that? I
am absolutely willing to do that. And now that
Excellent.
makes me choose a different poem than I was thinking to do.
Okay.
So when I will say too, when I'm thinking about performance, that there are some people who, when they perform poems, you can't look away. And there was an Irish poet, and of course his last name is escaping me, but he had a poem called Black Ice, and it took him maybe 4 or 5 minutes to perform it, but it was a recitation. He always performed from memory, and his name was Michael something. God, I wish I could remember, but it was Michael Doherty maybe. But his performance, you couldn't look away. If it was ever, it might be on video somewhere, and if you could capture it, it was amazing.
Awesome.
So I guess what I should say about this is called The Ugliest Girl in Christendom Goes to the Gynecologist. It's from, shameless plug, this book, The Four Ugliest Children in Christendom. And I guess that's all I'll tell you. When she asks the doctor what it looks like, the doctor hands the girl a small mirror. The girl curls her knobby shoulders forward, places the glass between her legs, and gasps in fury. Here, at last, all the missing pigment, all the rich color, the plump curvature she longs for. Outside, her body glows white, Siberian hair, pale eyes, skin white as pneumatic froth, and thin, so very thin. When she swims in front of the pool light, her siblings see her every attenuated bone, the long fingers of ribs closing over her heart. But here, between her legs, smiling lipstick. The doctor raises a questioning brow. The girl scowls more deeply, shimmies forward on the table, and swings her legs down. The knock of her knees a dull sound. The doctor leaves, and the girl pulls on her bra and shirt, contemplates ways to wear very short skirts, to bend until people see her burst, the real rage of her body, this small strip. She pulls her bikinis up slowly, fuming. What good is a secret that can't be told?
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, what good is a secret that can't be told? Yeah. So just to go backtrack, it is Michael Donaghy. Yeah.
Donaghy. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I'd like to think that I pulled that out of somewhere, but it was our tech staff, Vanessa, who used her Googling technique to get the title of Black Eyes. Thank you. Yeah. So, and again, hearing the words, the way that you string it together when you're writing poetry, does it come to you in that sort of lyric, rhythmic nature, or is that something you go back and kind of firm up? I mean, obviously you're going to edit your work, but what is that process for you of the poem, being constructed?
That tends to come to me kind of in that rhythm. Characters have a very distinct voice in my head. I'm not overwriting them. Typically, I tend to have a 4 to 5 beat line pretty natively. Yeah, I mean, I'm not someone who goes back and is really imposing like iambic pentameter on top of the lines, and I can and in fact, sometimes when I first started writing the poems for The Ugliest Children, some of them I even wrote it as prose poems, and then when I broke them into lines, found that even so, natively, I have a 4 to 5 beat line, and it's just kind of something that is my native music.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because I don't listen to music. I know that other poets might listen to music to put them back in a particular feeling. I never do that. First, because I like music too much. It's too distracting. But second, too, because I think it would impact me. But the way that I write is inherently the 4 to 5 beat line.
Yeah.
So that's an
Were you
interesting
writing?
question. What's that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, were you writing when you say innately, like did you write poetry as a child as well?
I did, but it tended to be like, oh, I have no money for my allowance, and I need to make a Christmas gift for my aunt. Here's a lovely book of poetry. I told stories and things like that, and I enjoyed it in school. And I remember some class assignments. I remember I had an assignment for J. Alfred Prufrock, and the assignment was going to be, and I didn't realize this at the time. She said, I have an assignment. It's going to be really exciting. We'll do it next time. And I thought for sure it was going to be the woman's response to Prufrock not asking the question. And I was, in fact, so certain that I wrote the poem. And then the next time she said, well, actually, it's going to be a psychological evaluation of Prufrock. And I thought, well, that's not right. And I handed the poem in anyway. But so I did have a kind of native attraction to poetry, and was already giving myself assignments, I guess, without, the teachers. That seemed like the clear assignment to me. Like,
Yes,
anyway,
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
assignment.
That was your innate answer. And if there's nothing better in this life than to find out exactly who you are, I mean, kudos, right?
Well, and it's psychologically,
So
it's dangerous to assess
yeah,
people when you have no training. That's dangerous.
right, exactly. So, well, what is your writing process? And we heard about Sunday mornings. I mean, again, it's related to the time that you have, but as a teacher and as a writer yourself, share a little bit about what your process might be.
Okay, so I'm not a pen and paper person. I never have been. That's way too slow for me. Again, this idea of speed is always with me. That's very slow for me. I tend to think 2 to 3 lines faster than I type. And if I'm writing, I'll never catch up with myself if I'm using my hand. I really tend to compose a line at a time. It is language based for me. And so I will come up with an initial idea, which might be just an image, or it might be based on something in the news that's upset me, or something that's happened to someone that's upset me, or interested me. I can't say that every poem I've ever written is based on upset or anything like that. Right. But that usually is where I start, and then within the language itself, there tends to be some music. I don't tend to end rhyme, but I do like assonance and consonants a lot, and so I'm listening to kind of those sounds. And I also tend to like anaphora, that repetition of phrases. I tend to like lists, appositives where I rename the noun. I like those a lot, maybe too much. And so as I'm writing, that's kind of what I'm looking towards. But I'm always looking to surprise myself. I never know how the poem's going to end. If I know how the poem's going to end, then I switch it to the beginning, because that's, I think it's Kumanyaka who said something like, only write what you're willing to discover, or don't write what you know, write what you're willing to discover. And I agree with that, because if I already know how it's going to end, I shouldn't have written it. Like, that's not, the whole business is that you're supposed to discover something.
And I think it shows that someone hasn't taken us on our own journey, like has gotten so in the way of the work that the reader or listener can't have their own discovery as well. Yeah,
it becomes almost didactic, and that I think kills it, or if it's so technical that it lacks blood, I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested. And I've always felt that way. And that's where you like people who do formalism really well keep the blood in the body, and people who don't deliver cadavers, and that's kind of the problem. There's an Anthony Hecht poem called The Book of Yolick. That's a sestina, and it is amazing. And the blood's in the body, and it's singing. That's an amazing poem. And so there's things like that. Oh, there's a small child to the left. I guess, that's my, I would say that's my process. Like I tend to write the full poem. I almost never leave a poem. I write full the way through, and then a few days later, I'll go back to it and look it over and figure out what I want to do. I say a few days, but it's probably weeks. It's probably closer to weeks.
Time means nothing anymore, right? Well, I want to make sure that folks know how to find you on this World Wide Web we have. Your website is, in fact, your full name with no punctuation, Camille-Yvette Welsch .com, so that folks can find you, your work there. I'm going to end with, I want to make sure, well, actually, let me ask you one more question, and then I want to make sure to talk about how folks can get tickets for the festival that's coming up in June. So if you could tell your younger writing self any one thing, what would it be?
There's no gimmick. I've desperately been like, what is the gimmick where every time I sit down to write, I'll write a good poem? And there's no gimmick. You just have to continue running wide open. There's for a while there, I was like, well, if I do a nature metaphor, I can relate it to relationships and that'll work. I just wanted there to be a gimmick so bad. There's no gimmick. It's like, girl, you just have to run wide open and wait it out. And that's, and I guess the other thing is art waits. You can leave and it will be waiting for you when you come back.
I love it.
Those are the two things.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Camille-Yvette, it's been wonderful speaking with you today. We're so appreciative of your time. I want to make sure, let's put up the screen where we can tell folks where to get tickets for the upcoming theater and dance festival. It is on Broadway on demand and under Tempest Productions. You can find tickets for Shannon Bishop's amazing show, which she brought in dancers from all over the world, particularly Egypt. We've got lots of poetry, we've got improv, we've got dance, you name it, it's going to be happening during the festival. And you purchase your tickets through Broadway on Demand. I think you go to www.broadwayondemand.com. And then you're going to search for Tempest Productions Incorporated. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for throwing that up on the screen. We will be back Tuesday at 1 with another edition of Live at 1. Hello, Callie. Thanks for joining us, everybody. There we go. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.